Good afternoon, everybody. I know there's high benchmarks that have been set with all the lovely inspirational speakers that were here on this platform before me. I don't have much to talk about with what I've done with my life, but I just have small inspirations that I would like to share with the little things that have taken place in my little journey called life. So I woke up one morning. I was wearing this lovely orange top, and I walked into college. It was during my graduation at St. Aloysius College, Mangalore. I used to hang out with this huge bunch of friends I used to call the NRI gang, a term we used to give students that used to study abroad and had come back to India to attend grad school. So somewhere during that day, my friends complimented me on the color of my top. And I very confidently told them that I had purchased it the previous evening, that it was an original brand, one that wasn't available in Mangalore then and still isn't. I'm a small town girl, you see. I remember how they laughed out loud as they told me, or they asked me for the price of the top, and I said, I paid about $4. And that the lady who gave me the top had given me a further discount on it. They only laughed louder to tell me that the brand that I had mentioned to them would have never come so cheap and that I had been duped. Well, to me, I had never traveled out of India then, so I wasn't convinced. I remember rushing back home that evening, looking up online, trying to find out what the actual price of that top was, and only to realize that they were not wrong. I was tossing and turning, sleepless that night, wondering what happened that day, feeling stupid about what happened, and feeling backward. For someone like me that used to excel academically, for someone like me that used to be called the brain, I was feeling like my entire being was being reduced to the size of a little pea. How could I have been duped in this manner? Why were my friends ridiculing me? Why did I not know about this myself? Obviously, my friends were raised abroad, so they were aware of these things happening around the world. I realized that I needed to learn. That's when I realized that I needed to know more. Suddenly, it dawned upon me that everything that I knew about myself and about the world was restricted to the geographical area that I belonged to, was limited to the city that I lived in. There was no point standing first in class, being multi-talented, if I didn't know anything about this world, because there was so much more to life than just that. To many of you sitting here, this might be the silliest situation for a turning point. But to me, it was one. And it was one that hit me hard enough to want to know more and more every day. Google became my best friend, YouTube my favorite companion, and blogs were my buddies. So I asked my best friend Google, show me the fastest way to know everything about the world. And I followed what Google said. But that was only so much compared to when my real life learning started. And that was when I traveled. Fortunately for me, in those 2 years, I had the opportunity to meet my brother and his family the first year to Dubai, and the second year to Prague, Czech Republic. Lest I forget to mention this later, of all the places that I've ever seen, Prague is undoubtedly the most beautiful. And if you've not been there yet, it's got to be on your bucket list. From these travels, I realized that my life was being impacted in ways that I least thought it would. From international flights, jet lags, layovers, sipping on an espresso, something I haven't developed the palate for yet, to learning words like Salaam Alaikum, Dobri Den, traveling in meter taxis, trams, metros, relishing shawarmas with pickles, to tasting varieties of cheese, my jaw dropping in front of the tallest building in the world in Dubai, to watching the amazing change of guard ceremony at the Prague Castle. I had so many experiences to share. I suddenly realized that had I not to have stepped out of the country that I was living in, I wouldn't have known or experienced half of the feelings that I was now. I realized that things that were taboo in my city were perfectly normal elsewhere, and things that were normal in my city were banned elsewhere. So I was having humongous culture shocks along the way. So my thirst to experience the world landed me a place at Leeds Metropolitan University, where I landed straight into knee-deep snow on my 21st birthday. And boy, I had no idea I was going to go down sliding home that evening. So I was a late born. Being a late born, my parents, my brother, they'd almost forgotten that I was growing up. So pampered with so much of love and care, it was only my time in Leeds that taught me to be independent, fearless, and strong. I did it on my own. Fearless enough to kill that spider in my house alone. Strong enough to carry my grocery bags on my own. And independent enough to decide how much allowance to spend on bills and how much on shopping. I was now sitting in a class full of students from different nationalities, listening to variations of the English accent. I was learning that unlike me, more than half the students in my class were funding their own master's degree, juggling between part-time, full-time, and freelance jobs. I was in awe. So I began to get this feeling inside me that had I not to have stepped out of my city when I was much younger, or had I not to have decided to get out of India for my education, probably I wouldn't have become this person that I had now become. I began to accept myself the way I was. I began to become comfortable being pea-sized in this big world. I also realized that people went to tanning salons to get my skin color. And I also realized that being English didn't mean that they all knew how to spell. And that the chips and the crisps to the English were fries and chips to Indians, right? I was falling in love. I was falling in love with this feeling of belonging to the world, of just being out there, experiencing it. But more importantly, I was loving the feeling of being accepted by the world. Then was my next career move, the big career move. I landed myself a place, a job in Oman, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. I was manager, marketing, and corporate communications at Oman's largest travel and hospitality company. I was now finding ways every day, I still do, to entice people in Oman to travel and experience the world like I did. And in the same breath, I was luring people from all across the world to come and experience Oman, Arabia's best-kept secret. Because much against perceptions, Oman was not a challenge for me at all when I lived alone. The culture of the people in Oman came to me as a pleasant surprise. It's more than the hospitality, more than the ever so helpful nature of the Omanis here. What I loved about Oman was its natural beauty. The plethora of textures that Oman could offer that would be enticing to photographers, destination wedding planners, filmmakers too. I dreamed of making Oman something better than the Cappadocia of Turkey, than the Interlaken of Switzerland. And very soon, I was promoting an entire nation to the whole world. I was representing Oman at international travel trade exhibitions, rubbing shoulders with international film fraternity. And every time I spoke about Oman, my eyes would light up like it was my own. I used to cheer just like the Omanis did at the crazy National Day celebrations, at the Gulf Cup matches. Something was weird here. Like, what was going on? How was I able to do this? How was I able to be in love with this magic that Oman gave me? Was I learning to become a world citizen? And that's when I asked myself 6 questions. How was I able to love a country so much that I wasn't born in? Could I then fall in love with every other country in the same manner? What if I had to travel when I was much younger? What if annual family vacations were made mandatory? What if we started giving the experience of lifestyle, cultures, ethnicities to kids from a very young age? What if we were all trying to become global citizens? So, nationality is something that a child gets at birth, right? Perceptions, personalities, these are mostly built around family, surrounding, society, the country's laws, social norms, what your education system teaches, and your peers. Let me get right into it. So, we're in a world that is obsessed by money, politics, social media, technology, where the highest rated media houses are the ones that document the highest number of deaths and controversies. I have a 2-year-old in my house, my niece, who will never sit down to have a meal without YouTube on her iPad. So right from a very young age, we're exposing children, the youth, to different forms of media that could be inflicting the ideology in them that the place out there, the world out there, is not a safe environment, and the best place to be is cocooned in the comfort of your home in front of a screen. So it becomes our responsibility as parents, as educators, as influencers, to show children that the world is beautiful out there, that there's a lot more you can experience in the world than sit within the 4 walls of your home, cocooned in that zone that you think is safe in front of your screen, and view the beauty of the world outside just through that screen. Travel has been redefined. Travel is not as expensive as it used to be. Sorry. There are different options of travel these days. There are very different varieties that people can opt for while taking their kids on vacations. You have educational tours, you have cultural exchanges, you have historical tours, you have volunteering opportunities. When you introduce children to such forms of travel from a very young age, you get them to meet different people, you get them in touch with different cultures, and the idea of how big the world is gets out of that little geography textbook, and the history lessons become more relatable to the monuments and landmarks that they see around the world during their journeys. Show of hands, how many of you know about the Eiffel Tower in Paris? Okay, hands down. How many of you have seen the Eiffel Tower on any form of media? YouTube, Instagram, da-da-da-da. All right, hands down. Now the last one. How many of you have actually been to the Eiffel Tower in Paris? Right. So you see, we started with almost 100% of you, and now we're down to about 15, 20? Right. So when you're actually standing there at the Eiffel Tower and you're looking up at it, you'd probably wonder, what kind of a person would be crazy enough to come up with an idea like that? Standing there and getting that life-changing experience and just thinking to yourself, wow, this is more magnificent than I ever thought it was. That right there is the power of travel. So why did I mention about my little experiences in life to you earlier? Why am I standing here on this platform when I know, like I said, I haven't achieved half of what most of the speakers on this platform would have? I'm just an ordinary person with a simple idea. I've traveled a tiny bit into this big world. But my life has a story. It has a little inspiration that I'd like to share with you, so that, like me, millions of ordinary people in the world can travel. More importantly, travel with their children as early as they should, to make them belong to the world, to show them how beautiful it is to travel and experience the world, to break the thin borders that surround nations, to learn from, to give to, and grow with the world. To become, like they say, ethnocentric, so that they are able to accept people the way they are, accept themselves the way they are, and give back to the community, to the world at large along the way. What I know now, with the little that I've traveled, let me share with you what I've learned from my travels. Travel is undoubtedly the best form of education. It teaches one to be humble and to spread love. So we're living in a world where, you're forced to excel. You're forced to excel in advanced courses, get a good job, buy a fancy car, get a big house, and so on. But if you've ever thought of taking your children to the so-called third world countries, or sometimes even to places nearby in your own country, you will realize that your children are able to experience, where you have families working for more than 12 hours to get just 2 meals to feed, I don't know how many members that sit in the house. You give your children the experience of seeing such humbling experiences that will make them retrospect, redefine their wants and their happiness. They will learn to treat each other with dignity and in turn begin to spread love. Traveling teaches you invaluable life skills. Traveling teaches you skills like communication, time management, organization. It teaches you how to interact with people of different communities, different cultures. It teaches you, more importantly, it teaches your children how to learn to live on a budget. So you teach your children how to give up on that daily luxury for the want of wanting to see a new place tomorrow. Travel will teach you that you don't need much to survive. It teaches you to be minimalistic. So when you realize that your entire existence revolves around a little suitcase, a couple of clothes, a passport, and maybe a camera, you will realize that everything else that made you happy, your house, your car, and maybe all the junk that you've accumulated over the years, becomes very minuscule, becomes redundant in comparison to the happiness that you get when you're traveling. The feeling of, I can do with this. I'm still happy with the little that I have. And that's when you start teaching your children the real value of little things in life. Travel will teach you about yourself. So most of the time, we are, our choices, our personalities are affected by the environment that we are surrounded by, our peers, our family, our friends. But when you travel, you meet new people, you make new thoughts, you have new experiences, you learn new things. And then you realize that your opinions, your choices, your personality, your ideologies, they've all started changing. You've started evolving as a person. And that's when you start realizing who you really are, what you really want to do, where you want to be, who you want to spend your time with. And as adults, it's very important to teach your children to recognize these interests, to make these choices while they travel. Travel unifies you with nature and culture. When you travel, you learn to appreciate the importance of beauty, culture, art, in all its variety. You unify yourself with nature and in turn with your inner being, and you learn the true meaning of coexistence. Travel inspires you with new ideas, be it business or life. I've realized that when you travel, you see so many businesses out there that may not have been an option when you're in your country. You learn about new businesses. You learn about probably franchisee opportunities. You learn something new from another community, and you want to inculcate that, you want to imbibe that into your society, where you can be a huge contributor to develop your own society. So let me give you an example. At the age of 29, this man traveled from the USA to Italy. He learned about the Italian coffee culture. He took it back with him to the USA and developed a company that's now worth more than $80 billion. Starbucks, that's right. Another one. This man, at the age of 40, traveled to Thailand and watched the tuk-tuk drivers drink a beverage that kept them awake. He tasted the drink. He bought the rights to the small company and developed this into, right, $20 billion worth company, Red Bull. That is the power of travel. Okay, travel molds careers. Many countries have limited career options. So when you travel, you actually find that you may have an aptitude for things that, or for careers that may not be an option in your country at all. Say, as parents, many times we want to pressurize the kids, like most of our speakers said here, pressurize the kids about this is what you got to be, this is what you got to become. I have a little suggestion to make. Why don't you let them travel? Why don't you let them see what is there in the world outside? Maybe you'll realize that they have an aptitude for something else that was never an option for you in the country you lived in. Why would you not want to give your kids the wings to fly? Why would you not want to inculcate in them an early aptitude for a profession to aim toward, something that they might learn along in their journey? Travel gives you a sense of satisfaction. Asim, I think, has left for the day. Is he here? Oh, he's here. So from the little experience that changed Asim's life, it was when he traveled. It was when he went and clicked pictures in that little place in Bangalore. Was it Bangalore? Yes, it was Bangalore. So as I was sitting there and I said, there, right there, that's the power of travel. You have volunteering opportunities. You have so many organizations that are increasing in number. Teach the young adults to take part in such initiatives. You don't want to send them alone? Travel with them. Take part with them in such projects so that you make your children socially responsible, morally aware, and that they realize their responsibility towards their community and their society as they give back to the world. You will teach them to become compassionate, humane. When I say humane, I think we're lacking a bit of humanity. Travel teaches you to be grateful. So I know I've been boring you with the points now, so let me tell you about something that I experienced with my Omani friend. She's actually in the audience here. So I met her at my workplace. I now call her family. She was 32 when I convinced her family to travel with me for 15 days to India. It was her first international trip, her first experience outside Oman, and I cannot forget the way her eyes lit up when we walked outside the Mumbai airport while we were in transit. The first thing she said to me was, I thought all the people in India were in Oman. There are still so many people in India. There, she said with utmost conviction to me, if I ever become a minister in India, I will make sure I paint all the houses and do up all the roads in India. And suddenly, I realized she had become grateful for things that she wasn't grateful for here back in Oman. You know, she became grateful for the road systems, the buildings, the facilities in the country. And that's when it dawned upon me that travel actually makes you grateful. It makes you grateful for the many things you don't realize are a blessing to you on a normal day. You become grateful to your family, to your country, to your community. You actually become grateful that you're alive, that you're going out there, seeing those people, seeing those places, experiencing those things. And that brings me to the last point. Ahmed, what was the last thing you connected to before you got here?
Last thing I connected must have been my phone.
Your phone. How many of you tried connecting to the Wi-Fi when you got here? Anyone tried connecting to the Wi-Fi? I'm sure you did. Come on. All right. Sorry. So the last point that I would want to talk about is travel teaches you to connect. You see, our life is full of connections. We're always connecting. Connecting to phones, connecting to Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, AirPods, laptops, chargers. It's all connections. But what we are failing to connect with is people. Travel teaches you how to connect with people. And it is our responsibility as adults, as parents, to teach our children how to unplug, how to go offline. Teach them not only to lock devices, but to lock eyes with people. Not just to record conversations, but to have conversations with people. And not just to share stories for 24 hours, but to share stories for a lifetime. And how can you have this impact on your children? It's by going offline yourself. You will realize that when you're on a vacation and you're offline, your family bond will get deeper, your relationships will grow stronger. Try the local food with your kids. Try talking to the local people in that country with your kids. You'll realize you've given them an experience of the authentic experience of that destination, of how to be in that place and take back innumerable memories. And you will realize that you've actually given unlimited connections to your children along the way, and they will use these connections with people as they go forward. So today I would like to ask youth, young parents, new parents, parents-to-be, people who've been parents for a while now, have you considered educating your children through travel? Have you considered taking your kids to one new place every year on a holiday? Have you begun saving up for your annual family vacation? And more importantly, have you begun your working on making your children world citizens? It's our generation today that understands the importance of travel. You had a yes to most of the questions. It's because we understand the importance of travel. And it's our responsibility alone to pass this on to the next generation, where being a world citizen will not be an option. It will be a requisite. Let me leave you with these thoughts. Childhood or early adulthood, like I said earlier, is the time when people make choices, perceptions, they build ideologies. So it's time you take the snapping, the filters, the stories a notch higher and teach your children to dream about a world without barriers. You know, in 1971, some time ago, John Lennon sang, "Imagine there's no countries, it's not hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, no religion too. Imagine the whole world living a life of peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one, and I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one." If he could be a dreamer, so can we. And travel alone can make your children world citizens, where between people, there's no filter. Thank you. Take it out.